Let me give some notes to the last recording. Fancy a marriage. They're inviting Jesus to it, and he brings his disciples, and his mum seems to be running the show, and they don't mention who's getting married. Did the original story writer realize that a rabbi would have no mana, so to speak, no clout, if he was neither married or had no children? Evidence that God didn't favour such a person. So he writes in a marriage. And did Mum say, they've run out of wine? Well, that would have been the most normal thing to say. No, she says they have no wine. If the editor of the story can't have Jesus being married, we just have a wedding floating in a vacuum. It's not that the wedding ran out of wine, it was that they had no wine. The Jewish people, on and off in the whole of their history, had no wine, in the sense of spirit. Spirit of life eternal. Life, true life. If you would enter into life, keep the commandments. If you would have riches in heaven, come follow me. Perhaps the storyteller, the story writer, had to have Jesus married because he was assuming that Israel was, Galilee even, was following an Orthodox Judaism. Didn't know that it wasn't. Didn't know that there was a major pagan temple within a day's walking distance of where he's got Jesus being brought up. Didn't know that a Roman city like Capernaum was anything but Judaic. Didn't know that the Judaic priesthood in Jerusalem was corrupt, Hellenistic. I mean, about this time they built a gymnasium, and it was argued that the priests of the temple spent more time in the gymnasium than in the temple. The story is not historicity, but it is spiritually valid. Edited or not, mistranslated or not, misplaced or not, it's still Gnostic through and through. Even the literalism is a standard Gnostic presentation for what is arrogantly hinted at being the feeble-minded, those that, in Paul's words, can only take the milk. This Gospel of John is there to both ensure acceptability to the literalist and to the true Gnostic. It's a masterstroke, just as the true politician speaks with a forked tongue, so to speak, where his words are ambiguously acceptable to a very wide audience of very conflicting views the editor couldn't resist putting in that the best wine had been kept until last, regardless of the story. It's likely not the best wine, but the only wine compared to the confusions of the religion of the day. Jesus was come that they would have life. Not that they'd had life, and this was simply better. The sincere, earnest Jewish setting is myth. That there was old wine is myth. What is not myth is that Jesus came that you might have life, life eternal, life more abundant, living water, not dead water, not stone water. This story is cardinal. It's the first of the 7 of John's Gospel. It's the most important. The ministry of John's Gospel, the bringing of the access to life eternal that should be celebrated. For it is this becoming one with God that gives access to life eternal. So we go into the discourse of Nicodemus and the cleansing of the temple. Not because of some chronological ordering of history, but because of relevance to what needs to be understood. The removal of corruption and its replacement with the Spirit of God, which is what we mean by being born again. Values completely consistent with God's, the Spirit of God. For this is life eternal, to know Thee, the only true God, and the way, Jesus, whom Thou hast sent. The sign of this salvation is not the miracles. The miracles simply glorify Jesus, that He is therefore noticed and received by those that have ears to hear. And the true Messiahship is not that He can destroy the enemies, but that He can resurrect the dead unto life eternal, which is of course the 7th miracle. Lazarus, raised from the dead, pointing to the resurrection story. And so it is, it's as if it were like this story. Not that it is this story and to be worshipped, but to realize always that the story points in the right direction. Enough for you to be rescued. Which is, of course, what Jesus, the name, means. Rescue, salvation. It is the way to life eternal, to know God. John 17, they have received my words. They've known, they've trusted, they believe that I've come from you. I've given them your name. that they might know you, the only true God, and therefore have life eternal.